Tuesday, April 19th. Welcome to this edition of Real Talk. Ryan Jesperson here with you, technical producer John Hicks riding shotgun on a post-long weekend edition, a short week edition. And as I said in my Real Talk email message that goes out, technically the Sunday message, but it goes out on a Monday, oftentimes on a long weekend. Whatever you were celebrating this weekend, or maybe it was just celebrating a long weekend. We hope that your extended break was all that you hoped it would be. We hope that you're feeling fulfilled and ready to hit the ground running this week. We've got a good week in store, including a couple of guests we're really excited about coming up later this week. Calgary's new poet laureate coming up tomorrow. On Thursday, it's Earth Day, which is going to be a great episode, a sort of a special edition of the show. And coming up today, in just a couple of minutes, we're going to talk to a 13-year veteran of firefighting. She's worked as a paramedic as well. For the last 7, she was on with Leduc Fire Services just south of us here in Edmonton in so-called central Alberta. Megan Wright will join us to explain why she publicly resigned from her position in Leduc in front of Leduc City Council at a city council meeting. You probably know that there's legal action underway, and Megan's not alone on this one. In fact, she's not even named in the initial suit. She's going to talk to us, though, about this firefighting culture and maybe what hasn't been reported in these 90-second stories that you see on the evening news. As is often the case, there's more to it. There's more to the story. There's a lot of background. There's contributing factors. This isn't a decision, I'm sure, that Megan made to walk away from her dream job without due thought and consideration. I'm looking forward to that conversation coming up. And then later on in the show, John, you've had an opportunity to go through these photos sent to us by David Liittschwager's publicist and the team behind this incredible new book of his Octopus, Seahorse, Jellyfish. How excited are you for this conversation?
I'm an animal lover, you know that. And these pictures are the detail on this. I got to ask him, like, how does he get them?
Yeah, it looks like they're studio shots.
It's incredible.
Of some of, as they say, of some of the most elusive and mysterious sea creatures out there. This show is a big fan of octopuses. We've done some features on them in the past. Did you see that documentary, My Octopus Teacher? Have you seen it?
Of course I did. Incredible.
Amazing, right?
But like, what do? Do you book a seahorse for a photo shoot? Like, these are like up close. I got to ask him.
There's going to be a lot of people I know that catch this on the podcast, and this might be the one where later on it's going to be about 35 minutes into this show, maybe about 40 minutes into this show. You might have to switch over to YouTube because you're going to want to see the photos as well, or you can just Google David Liittschwager, but very much looking forward to that. Plus, it's the beginning of the week. It's our first show of the week, which means we'll have positive reflections presented by our friends at Kuby Energy, and, of course, every Tuesday, The Leading Edge, presented by our friends at Leading Edge Physiotherapy. We're going to get into every week. It's a feature. It's a celebration of a person, a group, or it could even be like an invention, some entity that's changing people's lives, that's making planet Earth a better place to be. That's coming up, The Leading Edge, presented by Leading Edge Physio. Now, the show, of course, happens because of the support of sponsors like that, including our friends at Bitcoin Well. I popped in there last week. I was telling you, talking to Benny. Benny's kind of like the face of the front office, if you will, of Bitcoin Well. He's the one when you show up and you have questions. There's no dumb questions. Benny's probably the guy you're going to talk to. We got into the politics of Bitcoin, which I thought was really fascinating. He's got some great perspective on it. He says it's kind of being spun as like a right-wing conservative thing right now. He goes, you could make the exact argument in the opposite direction of the political spectrum. If you want to go, oh yeah, really? How, Benny? Well, look him up. You'll find Bitcoin Well under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Of course, as is the case, every single show, we want to know where you're at. We want to know how your weekend was. We want to know what's on your mind. We want to know your response to the guests that you're going to be hearing here on the show. You can use our hashtag RealTalkRJ, and of course, you can fire off a note on our live chat as well on YouTube. We do our best to stay on top of it all. The best way to get in touch with us is via email to talk@ryanjesperson.com, and that's what several of you have done. And we're going to get into your emails this week. I want to remind you as well, we do give out an email of the month month award, and it's a Real Talk official studio issue coffee mug that we award, one of them every single month, to the email that resonates most with our audience. And of course, we'll get to some of your comments. We got one from Michelle today, which is great, but I'm going to save it for the Park Power mention, Johnny, because her email has nothing to do with Park Power except for the very end.
Yeah.
But I like where she goes with it. She's a happy customer. She's
Excited.
a happy new customer, so we'll get to it. But she's talking about our upcoming Real Talk Golf Classic. I wanted to touch on something out of the gates today, and I don't have anything profound to offer this, but in our home city of Edmonton, though I know that this story is certainly impacting people across the country, Edmonton police confirming on Saturday that after our show wrapped on Friday, a young man, a 16-year-old kid, a grade 10 student outside McNally High School in our hometown of Edmonton, on just this past Friday, succumbed to injuries that were sustained in what I think you would have to call just a beating. It was an attack. 7 individuals, 7 young people, say police, and there's a lot of information swirling out there, and there's a lot of it that's unconfirmed, and so I'm going to be really careful in what I say about this, and we're not going to speculate on this, but police suggest that these were 7 people from another school, and that there was some sort of rivalry, and that it may or may not have even had anything to do with this young man. It sounds to me, and we appreciate that people relatively close to this story have been in touch with us, and we want to be really careful with the details that we share. But this young man that was known as Karen to his friends was essentially swarmed as he sat innocently, and by the way, by himself, waiting to leave school. It sounds like he was waiting for a bus, and 7 people came up to him. John, the details of it are horrific. He was stabbed multiple times, including in organs. I mean, this was a horrible beating. There are reports he was shot. He was beaten with a metal rod or other foreign objects. I mean, it was just a horrific situation, left there essentially to die.
Absolutely horrible.
The family that's or at least people speaking on behalf of the family have said that medical professionals, including the first responders that attended the scene, did everything they could, and he clung to life in hospital. This guy, this 16-year-old kid, was a fighter, but ultimately succumbed to these injuries, and it's got people talking. No one's going to be able to make sense of what happened. Nobody's going to be able to make sense of how a 16-year-old with a bright future, beloved by his friends and family, has his life snuffed out. Not to mention the young people whose lives will be forever changed. You might argue forever ruined by participating in this. And how about the witnesses? How about the students that were there, the parents that were there, the administrators, the teachers, the staff at this school? But over the course of the Easter weekend, Ramadan, Passover, people celebrating different religious traditions, etc., talking about family, talking about cherishing those close to you, trying to wrap their minds around this. People are wondering, how does this happen in front of a high school? How does this happen to an innocent 16-year-old kid? It's something that I just felt like we've been carrying this weekend. I wanted to address it. I don't know what I have to offer to the conversation.
Well, as a father, I mean, it must make you feel a certain way.
Well, you think about just, I can't imagine what his family is feeling right now. And just to say it, it feels tacky to say it, but the way that he died as well, the abuse that he suffered, the pain he would have been in, I just, and clinging to life in hospital. You think of his friends, you think of his family, and it's one of those things. I don't know if this would have, I mean, it's not, I feel bad. You don't want to sit here and sort of armchair, quarterback this thing. People have been talking, and I've noticed online a lot of the conversation around the school resource officers and having police officers in schools. Did you have one when you were in high school? Was there one in your school?
Well, I was just going to say that we had sort of a security guard that would walk around, and that was, I don't want to date myself, but that was like 20 years ago. So I'm just wondering, did this school have it? It should be in place, I think, at every school. I know it's a cost, and it will cost, the school something. But, there should be someone. I know there's, teachers walking around, kind of doing the best they can. But there should be a dedicated professional,
well,
I think, after this.
I mean, this
at
was, all reports, seem to indicate, and police have been really the releases, like the public statements that Edmonton police have made, that investigators have made, which is oftentimes the case when there are arrests outstanding, pre-trial type thing. Police have been sort of sparing in the details that they've provided, but it is clear that there were weapons present in this case. I think it's fair to suggest that it's unfair to put teachers in a situation where they're trying to manage a scenario where there's weapons.
Yeah, I totally didn't mean
right?
that.
No, I know you're not. I'm just saying. And also, I mean, had there been a school resource officer present, would that officer have been able to get there in time? Would they have been able to, would it have acted as a deterrent? If students from other schools, I
is
think
one
back in the
officer
day,
enough, right?
Is that enough?
Yeah.
And then if so, then what is enough, and how does it work? And how do we define community policing and all of these types of things? One of our audience members, Plain Power, right now says the Friends will retaliate. Violence begets violence. You hope that's not the case. That's one of the things police have addressed here in their communications, their public communications, talking about it. Jillian makes a fair point too. Says certain white people are quick to think the solution is always more police. When you need police intervention, you've acted too late. Stop cutting all other school supports. And we know Jillian, a regular commenter in our audience, is a teacher. So this is that's an astute comment on her part. And I don't mean to suggest that the answer is always more police. I don't know that a school resource officer, which is typically a police officer, a badged, sort of gun-carrying police officer that's stationed in a school. We had one in ours. We had a big high school. We had one in ours. I know that's not the case in every high school. We still had fights. There was still violence at our school. It didn't always act as a deterrent. Isabel here says, my son was attacked and repeatedly threatened with knives while attending Archbishop O'Leary, another high school in Edmonton. Says the school did nothing, nor did the police. We had to move him to another school. That from Isabel. You can let us know your thoughts on this. It's just obviously just an absolutely gut-wrenching, horrific tragedy, and it's one where we say, and we want to make sure that we simply communicate. Sometimes people sort of scoff at the idea of thoughts and prayers, but we do want his family to know that our family, our company here, and then, of course, our families individually as well are thinking of you. We did want to mention that there is a GoFundMe set up. You can simply Google GoFundMe, please help Karen Veer's family. And as you can see, the organizers there have set that up, and they've so far reached $176,000, which is really remarkable, of a goal of $250,000. They say that, his family, obviously, his father on long-term disability, his family's going to struggle. For the rest of their lives with this, but his mother, obviously overcome by grief, who wouldn't be, and they've got a 13-year-old daughter to support as well, his younger sister. And so you can check out GoFundMe, please help Karen Veer's family, if you'd like to help them out. In just a second, Megan Wright, a now former Leduc firefighter, will join us. She's a paramedic. She's been working in first response for more than a decade, 13 years now. She's going to tell us why she decided to resign from her dream job. That coming up in just a second. I mentioned the team at Park Power, how they power our hashtag every day, every single show. They're there powering the Real Talk RJ hashtag. Well, we want to remind you that Park Power right now with a great offer for Real Talkers. If you bring your business over there, internet, electricity, natural gas at parkpower.ca, using the promo code 2022-RealTalk is going to knock $70 off your first power bill. $70 knocked right off with the promo code 2022-RealTalk. You can check out their fixed rate option. They've got the regulated rate option, right? People say that maybe that's not the one you want to be on right now. If it's variable rate, the fixed rates give you a little more stability with your utilities. You can check that out. And I love this email I mentioned from Michelle. She was in touch. She knows our Real Talk Golf Classic's coming up June 23rd. We're opening up registration in the next few days.
Yeah.
And so she sent us an email to golf@ryanjesperson.com. She wants to volunteer. So we're going to be emailing Michelle back. We're excited about that. She says, oh yeah, P.S. The team at Park Power were amazing. I just switched over 2 weeks ago. Service couldn't be better, and I love keeping it local. That from Michelle. So don't take it from me. Take it from Michelle. I love that. Hey, Northwest Fest is coming up. We're excited to be partnering with Northwest Fest this year. May 2022, it is back, and Real Talk proud to be the opening night presenting sponsor. The opening night film this year, Who You Gonna Call? It's the story of the legendary artist who brought the Ghostbusters song to the world, but the massive success of the song overshadowed Ray Parker Jr.'s career. You will not want to miss opening night, Who You Gonna Call? You can check out all the details at northwestfest.ca, running from May 5th to 15th. All in-person screenings at Metro Cinema. Again, northwestfest.ca. Well, our first guest this morning started her career in EMS back in 2007. coming up on 15 years ago. Fire training was back in 2011. She's been at it for more than a decade as a full-time paramedic in our home city of Edmonton. And about 7 years ago, she started as well with Leduc Fire Services. Everybody learned Megan Wright's name when she spoke passionately in front of Leduc City Council just a short time ago, the beginning of April. She ended the 7-year career she'd grown up dreaming of as she stood up and offered her resignation over harassment allegations that she and at least 2 other female firefighters have publicly made. Megan Wright joining us live this morning on Real Talk. Thank you for making time for us. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate you allowing me this opportunity to sit down and just real talk about this.
Yeah, you and I had a chance to connect over the phone yesterday, and one of the things I appreciated, you were telling me how difficult it is to try to get a story out when you're talking to reporters and they've got to file stories that are 90 seconds on the 6 o'clock news, and the stories are over right as soon as they begin. And you're sitting there going, there's so many elements to this. There's such a significant, irrelevant background here. You want to make sure people totally understand the depth of your experience and the experience of other first responders you've worked with. You wanted to be a firefighter since you were a little girl.
Yeah. I actually, my first memory, I was really small, and my grandma, she worked at a health food store. And while I was there sometimes with her, and I was like only 5 or 6, they had some toys for like the grandkids that would come to work. And there was a stethoscope in it, and I was obsessed with it. And from there, it just like grew and grew and grew and grew. Started out as like just a helper, and then it just got bigger. And, as I got older and realizing, who comes with the ambulance all the time? Firefighters. And then I got obsessed with that too. And it's literally been like my life's work to do this.
So Megan, there was obviously a lot that went into you publicly offering your resignation earlier this month in front of Leduc City Council. And I don't want to speak certainly on your behalf, but there has been legal action naming 2 other female fighters, not yourself, as a matter of fact, in this initial action, but citing systemic harassment, bullying, allegations of discrimination. When did you first know, at what point in your career, that this was going to be part of it, that the well was poisoned to a certain degree? Do you remember?
The very first time I ever stepped on a firehouse floor. And that would have been in 2007.
And how did it present itself initially? Like, did you see it coming in a way? Had you heard about a certain culture?
You know what? I didn't actually see it coming, because I had thought, in this day and age, that sort of thing just didn't happen. And when I did my EMT in 2007, I was like obsessed. Like I was finally doing what I wanted to do. I was going to do my EMT, and then directly after that, I was going to do my fire training. And I did really well in school. Like I was actually the top of my class. And all my instructors were like, I have no concerns about you. You're going to do amazing in this career. And then I was blown away when I stepped onto the floor, and it was just like all this negative energy being thrown at me, and just automatically the message was, you're not enough. Like the minute you stepped on the floor, it didn't matter who I was. It didn't matter how much I loved the profession or how hard I had worked to get where I was. I just was immediately labeled not enough. And something I find really frustrating that I learned very quickly is women in the firehouse is actually, a lot of people consider it an equality hire. Like we're not good enough, and the only reason that we are given a position is because equality hires. Like, and I've heard this multiple times throughout my career. A prime example of that is Spruce Grove Fire Department. when they did kind of their initiative and they hired just females, that was disastrous. And I don't think it had the intent. Like, they didn't get what they wanted out of that. And then all that the public and other firefighters saw was that they were just given this opportunity and they must not be good enough. That's why they couldn't go through the regular process. And then there was all these like rumors that concessions had been made for them. And like, I can't really speak to that, but as soon as I seen that on the news and seen it being talked about within the first responder world, I was like, again, just apparently women aren't enough. And we have to be equality hires. And that's really frustrating to someone in this profession who has devoted their entire life's work to that.
Megan, how did you manage that, like early in your career into the years where you would become the more veteran firefighter or the more veteran firefighter paramedic? You know, obviously people will say, well, we understood. I know, you know, a lot of people might say on the fire department or anywhere else, first year, kind of the rookies do the dishes, the rookies do the cleaning. This is a rookie thing.
Totally.
What a culture thing, an initiation thing. But as you became more of a veteran, did it ease up, or was this something you were constantly managing?
Constant management. For me, later on in my career, not as bad. And I think a lot of that just has to do with like how I carry myself, my bearing. It's so sad that I have to say this, but I kind of had to reject being a woman in order to gain their approval. And anything seen as like soft and feminine was just unacceptable. And so I'd like to say that, you know, it got better, but I don't think it actually got better. It's just I had to change who I was when I was at work in order to be respected. And now that I think back on it and reflect on it, I'm like, that's not how it should be. You shouldn't have to change yourself to be accepted into an environment.
When you talk about the the allegations of harassment, of sexual misconduct, and I should note, as any interviewer should, that none of these allegations have been proven in court. But when you did bring these up with your superiors, I'm assuming that you did, what sort of a response did you get? How many times would you say that you ran this up the chain, so to speak?
A couple times. Not as much as I would like, because at some point you just get frustrated. Like, you start to feel like it's you and not them, especially when that's the constant message that you're receiving. And it's just frustrating.
So deciding to step in front of a city council, to attend a city council meeting and ultimately to offer your resignation is a big step. And it immediately puts you on the radar of news media, which, of course, then had hundreds of thousands of people, taking a look at your story and trying to understand the nuance of it, or filling in the blanks in their own minds of what the experience must have been like for you to get it to the point where you would say, though I've dreamed of this job since I was a young girl, I'm deciding to walk away from it. At what point did you cross that bridge? At what point did you say, I got to just walk away?
First, I'm going to preface this with kind of a background of myself, because I think it's important. In kind of like what I refer to as another life, I was abused physically, emotionally, and mentally by a man that I was in a relationship with. And I don't want to get into all the ins and outs of that, but it was terrible. And a week before I resigned, so I resigned in front of council on April 4th, but March 28th was actually the first time I went to a council meeting. And our intent was just to go and to let council know that, hey, like, not only are we employees, but we're also residents and citizens of the city of Leduc. And you have a major responsibility in that arena. and your only employee is the city manager. And if he's not doing his job, then you guys need to do something about it. So I had sent a counselor an email just to ask her. I didn't want to get into like the splashy details. I just said, have you seen the reports? And if you haven't, I need you to get them and I need you to read them. And I don't need it. I told her right in the email, I don't need to air all of this out with you right now, because if you just get the reports, it's all in there. And so she had said, no, we don't have the reports. We don't have access to them, and we're trying. That really upset me. And that was my first motivator to go to council on March 28th, to just show them like, hey, this isn't going away. Like, look at me right in my eyes and just know that this isn't a serious issue. So we had plans. It was myself and the two other female firefighters that were in the original statement of claim. And we went just by ourselves, and we had masks on that said silent no longer. And our plan was to say nothing. And as we walked in and we sat down, we were immediately approached by the protective services manager, Daryl Melby. And he made a beeline towards us and felt it was very important to remind us that this is a public forum.
Interesting.
That really upset me, because he didn't just say it once, and it wasn't just like a gentle reminder. To me, it felt like intimidation. It felt like I'm walking in there to send a message that I will be silent no longer, and I'm giving you an opportunity to do something. And instead of using that opportunity to do something, he felt the need to come and approach us and remind us several times, this is a public forum. I need to remind you, this is a public forum. I don't know if I've ever been so mad in my entire life. And something snapped in me that day. Because it just reminded me of my previous experience that I had had, and how difficult it was. That previous abuse, it followed a very similar pattern. And when I told people that should do something about it, they didn't. And when I tried to come forward on it multiple times, it was like I was gaslighted. Oh, it's not that bad. And when I was sitting there in council with these two other women, trying to support them the best that I could, and that happened, I snapped. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to take this silent no longer thing to the next level. I'm just not sure how. I'm not sure when. I'm not sure how, like, what I'm going to do about it. I just knew that I left that meeting and I had to do something about it. And that week was quite possibly one of the hardest weeks I've ever had in my life.
Sure.
Because I had to come to terms not only with all of the trauma that had happened at the fire hall, not only in Leduc, but at other departments, in fire school, like, and this crosses like countries. Like, I went to fire school in a different country. And just realizing like, oh my goodness, like, we cannot let this happen anymore, because now it wasn't just directed at me. I realized it was directed at all women, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And I knew I had to do something. I had to step up, and I had to say something. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I mean, I so appreciate your candor, Megan. It must be difficult to talk about this, but I also just appreciate you shining some light for us on what the experience was like for you. Did you receive any support from fellow firefighters? I know that obviously you sort of, it's one of those jobs where it's like a calling, right? It's more than a job; it's a career for sure. And they talk about family and the so-called brotherhood, right?
And also too, like, we refer to, we prefer to talk about the fire hall as the firehouse. because we're a family. But if you notice, I'm sure you listened to my resignation speech, I never called it the firehouse, because to me, it's not the firehouse anymore. And, I'm getting a little emotional. Like, for example, on all of our apparatus, it says, "Our family protecting yours." And I always thought that that meant that we were just, like, we were in this calling together when I was a part of something so big and so important. And to realize that, like, oh my goodness, like, the thing that I've devoted my entire life to isn't what I thought it was. And that was really hard to come to. And first, I want to take this in a couple of different directions. First, it's not all the men. Because I think that's really important to say. It's not every single guy at Leduc Fire. There are multiples that I would that work there that I would consider like my brothers, and they are part of my family. And you had to throw that picture up, hey?
What are we seeing here, Megan?
So this is actually during my fire recruit class, and this is for, I'm sure everybody's heard of the fire camp out. I know we haven't done one in a couple years because of COVID.
That's the muscular dystrophy one, right?
Yeah,
or is it? Yeah,
it's like the huge. It's huge, and there's so many components to this, because yes, that cause is super important to us, but it's also as well where we all get together as a family and we raise money for muscular dystrophy, and we do it in a super cool way. And the gentleman that I'm standing with in that photo, those are my brothers. Like, they were in my recruit class, and as the recruit class, it was kind of our job to stand on the road and get donations with the boot. So that's kind of why when that picture popped up, I got a little bit emotional, because there are guys there that are my brothers, and they would never do something like this. But it's a big issue because it's like they feel that they can't support us, and that upsets me so much, because they consider us to be family and they're afraid to support us, and that just hurts me so much.
Megan, sorry, go ahead.
I lost my train of thought.
I interrupt. I'm sorry.
No
I wanted to make the point to you that when we chatted yesterday, I told you that this was going to happen. I told you that time was going to fly when we're talking, and we've been talking now for more than 20 minutes, and I've still not
seriously.
we've not even got to the point, the important one I know that you wanted to make as well, which is that, and I appreciate you being willing to talk about it because it is so important, and that is the mental health and the potential trauma implications of first response and of that career calling. And I'd be curious to know how much of a factor your own experience, your own mental health was in ultimately getting you to the point of doing interviews like this, of becoming almost, I know you may not like it put this way, but kind of the face of an issue that probably many people experience in their line of work.
Totally. And I definitely feel the responsibility and the weight of that, because when I resigned in front of council, like, originally that was for me. That was just like, I'm so done with all of this. I'm so done with all of the abuse. And I'm finally going to step forward and say, this is enough. And where did I get the strength and fortitude to do that? One, my own personal experience. Like, I've experienced this type of stuff before, and I know that I have that internal strength to draw from, that I can stand up and say, no, this is enough. I'm not dealing with this. So the original intent was for me, like, for my own mental health, because I'm just like, I'm done with this. I cannot deal with this. And they need to know, and everybody needs to know, that this is unacceptable. And then it just kind of went in this completely different direction. And that makes me kind of like want to talk about like the mental health aspect of it. As a first responder, mental health is a big issue. And I know this is talked about a lot, but I think like the big point that I would like to get across is being a first responder is hard already. The trauma that you say day in and day out, it's enough to break the average person. To be a first responder, you have to be a very special kind of person. And unfortunately, even if you have everything that you need, sometimes this job just gets to you, because we see some terrible things.
Yeah.
But on top of that, so when you're dealing with all of this, and then you add that like discrimination, intimidation, bullying, it's just like this whole nother layer, and you just feel suffocated. And I know for myself, I got to a point where I didn't want to live anymore. And not just like, not even I want to kill myself. Like it wasn't even that. It's so hard to explain. It was just like, this is so much. It's so overwhelming. I can't deal with this anymore. I just want to die. And not because I wanted to actually end my life or kill myself. I just wanted all of this to end. So thankfully, about 2.5 years ago, I had the strength and wherewithal to stand back and go, oh my goodness, Megan, if this is your thought every single day, we have a problem. You also think that you're not enough, that you're not good enough. Why? Where does this come from? And thankfully, I got help, extensive therapy. And it made me be able to take a step back, reflect on what's happening, and just be like, no, this is wrong. So wrong, Megan. And for you to step into the light and out of the fear and just say, this is wrong, for me, that's what set me free. Like knowing that I don't care what happens after this. I just need to stand up and say, nope, not acceptable, not cool. I'm not okay with it. And then after that, after I stood up in front of council and said that, oh my goodness, it felt so good. And like this weight has been lifted off of me that I've been carrying around since 2007.
Megan, I'm grateful. I know that the story doesn't end here, obviously, and I know that the city of Leduc has, in response to these allegations, taken several steps. Disciplinary action that the city says balances an appropriate penalty against the level of misconduct that's taken place. They've launched a national search to find a new fire chief. Theirs just resigned. An external firm secured to conduct a culture review of the organization to create action plans that they say will ensure holistic culture changes. Dedicated healthcare professionals made available to provide counseling and mental health support specifically for the fire department, and a stronger commitment to increased communication from administration. I guess ultimately the question is, in closing, and I'll ask you this, we respect your time and your availability here. I mean, how do you make systemic change in an industry like this? Like you said, the story goes beyond Leduc. It doesn't mean that Leduc doesn't have to look at its own backyard. It doesn't mean that other fire departments or other workplaces, for that matter, have to examine their own space. But when it comes to systemic change, do those sound like steps in the right direction? Do you expect those steps?
Well, again, I'll be real with you, Ryan. How many times have I heard that in my career over and over and over again since 2007? A lot. And it's a lot of lip service, in my opinion. For example, if you were to pull up Leduc Fire Services website, like their Facebook page, you would see, if you scroll down, you would actually probably find pictures of me in there. And it's like hashtag International Women's Day. We're so proud. Da, 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 da. But how I feel about that is you don't actually feel pride in us, because if you did actually feel pride in us, this stuff would never happen in the fire department. And if we stepped forward and said, oh my goodness, this is happening, I don't know what to do, the people that are, their whole job is to take care of us and keep us safe, they would have actually done something. So every time I see one of those photos, I get so frustrated, and I actually spoke out about it and said, if you guys are going to post these photos, like, well and good, like, I appreciate what you're doing because it is a good message for young women and everyone. But at the same time, if it's all lip service and you don't actually believe it, and like, we're more just like, you prayed us out so you can be like, oh, look at how inclusive I am. Look at how many women I let work here. That's how it feels to me. And I have actually even refused to be a part of photos. And then they ended up just taking them anyways. And then I sat down and like had conversations with officers trying to explain to them, it's not that we don't want to take the photos and we don't want to be a part of it and we don't want to have that good message, but when it's your narrative and not ours, it's frustrating.
Megan Wright has worked in first response as a paramedic and a firefighter since 2007. She's not named in legal action against the city of Leduc, at least not for now, but certainly is one of those that has spoken publicly, including a resignation in front of Leduc City Council earlier this month. We've talked for half an hour, and I know we could keep going, Megan. I know that people are going to be certainly grateful for you sharing your perspective here, and we appreciate it. Thanks for the real talk.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Like, honestly, I just appreciate this so much. And I know we didn't get through everything because it's a lot. So if you ever want me back, you just let me know, because there's pages, there's stuff that we can talk about. Even if you want to get into like the actual specifics about me, we can do that. But I just think the first most important message here was just some bad stuff's going on. And it has greater implications for not just women, not just the fire hall, but like society, the world. And I think it's really important that we start talking about it. And I'm tired of hearing this conversation is difficult to have.
We know it's difficult.
I know it's difficult. It's difficult for you. It's difficult for me.
But you showed up for it, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Megan.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
You got it. That's Megan Wright. You can let us know your thoughts. I'm sure that some of you, this experience will resonate. I'm sure that we're going to hear from firefighters that would like to share their thoughts. And, of course, this is an issue that extends across industries, across professions. Talk@ryanjesperson.com is where you can be in touch. You can send us an email anytime. Coming up in just a moment, The Leading Edge, and then National Geographic photographer David Liittschwager, this incredible new book, Octopus, Seahorse, Jellyfish. Can't wait to see it. First, this is a message for all of those families that have a family member, a beloved family member that wants to maintain their independence. They want to age in place. They want to be able to stay home. They don't want you to put them into a center. But at the same time, you've got concerns. You want to make sure they're getting their medicine. You want to make sure that they're eating properly, that they're socializing with other people, maybe a caregiver that's been chosen specifically through a personality matching process. This is exactly what Infinity Healthcare does. I want you to check them out today. If this is something that is right up your alley, if this is maybe a decision that your family's looking to make over the next number of weeks or months, we recommend Infinity Healthcare at infinity-8.ca. They're always hiring, by the way. If you're in the caregiving profession, swing on by their website. Also, I mentioned this morning that Canada's online university, Athabasca University, sees big interest in enrollment in the spring. I'm wondering if it's that kind of psychological impact that spring has on most of us, if not all of us. The fresh start, the new beginning, right? As the snow melts, the flowers start to come up. Why not let the same thing happen in your own world? Maybe your new career pursuit. Athabasca U has world-class accredited online programs and courses that offer you flexibility. That's one of the biggest factors why so many people choose Athabasca University. It's also one of Canada's most renowned research universities. You can learn more about what they're doing today at athabascau.ca. And our friends at Local Environmental want to remind you that they are in the business not just of waste and recycling management, but also water hauling, portable fences, portable toilets, landfill services, vacuum trucks, and they're constantly expanding their footprint. I saw them tweeting out to the good folks of Whitecourt just the other day. They're doing big things in Sturgeon County as well, and elsewhere across Alberta and Saskatchewan. You can learn more at localenvironmental.ca. And of course, don't forget Trash Talk every Fridays here on the show. Get a rant off your chest by emailing us. It's presented proudly by Local Environmental. David Liittschwager in just a moment. Every Tuesday, our friends at Leading Edge Physiotherapy give us a chance to shine the spotlight on a person, a group, or even a thing that's changing people's lives, that's making a huge impact. We call it the Leading Edge. In the spotlight today is the amazing team. It's Leading Edge's Charity of the Month for April. It's Food for Thought. This is the story of a family that saw a need and then went above and beyond to create an incredible entity that feeds hungry students, hundreds of them every single week. They're celebrating their 20th year of operation this year, a nonprofit providing food for hungry school children. It started back in 2002 when Carol and Bernie Kowalchuk read an article about government-funded school lunch programs cut. Well, they partnered with a local grocer, and they arranged to have hot lunches delivered to Sifton Elementary School. Well, over the past 20 years, of course, many schools have signed on. They've served more than 1 million meals to students in the Edmonton area. It's now a second-generation family operation with their daughters, Christine and Kelly, creating a small volunteer board. They still hold their meetings around Carol, their mom's kitchen table. They've expanded to 20 schools now. They have no overhead or operating costs, and 100% of donations are used to purchase and deliver food. That's why they're on the leading edge. Leading Edge Physiotherapy is proud to support Food for Thought and thrilled to announce they're sponsoring an entire new school for the next school year. That means breakfasts and lunches for children who would not otherwise have these meals provided. You can learn more at foodforthoughtedmonton.com and support that program if you feel led. The Leading Edge is presented by Leading Edge Physiotherapy. Life shouldn't hurt. Well, our next guest is a world-renowned photographer. Let me just grab the hard copy of this book. This is absolutely stunning, published by National Geographic. It's David Liittschwager's new work, Octopus, Seahorse, Jellyfish, an introduction to an exploration of some of the world's most elusive and mysterious sea creatures. David, welcome to Real Talk, and thanks for making time for us this morning. Congratulations on this amazing new book.
Nice to be with you. Thank you.
Am I pronouncing your last name okay?
Yes, absolutely fine.
Wonderful. David, you've, of course, the covers that you've shot for National Geographic have just caused people to stop in their tracks and stare. You're a master of storytelling through the photographic arts. What was it about these three sea creatures in particular that prompted this incredible adventure?
Well, they're cool. And people love octopuses. Seahorses are like the a thing of sort of legend and myth. And jellyfish, some people get the total creeps from them, and some people really love them. So I think each one of them has their own little appeal. So it was a nice thing to be able to go back and look at projects that were specifically about each one of those, that were magazine articles, and then draw from other articles, that also included some of those creatures as well, and bring it all together.
We've let our podcast audience know ahead of time that they're probably going to want to make the flip over to YouTube so they can check out some of these photos. Producer John Hicks.
Or they're going to miss out.
They're going to miss out. I mean, you got to see these images that David captured. David, how on earth do you get photos like this? Can you explain this to us? This looks like you got a seahorse into studio shooting in front of a white wall. How do you capture something like this?
Well, I went to a place called Seahorse World for this one, and it's kind of like it's a seahorse farm, basically. They raise them, and then they share them with public aquariums and other places for educational purposes. And so they have a lot of seahorses. and that was a male seahorse that had just given birth to all of those little small seahorses. And it's in a little, it's a tank called a chrysal tank. It has a circular flow. And the seahorses like to find a place in that circular flow where they can just kind of hang out. And so by manipulating that, you can get everything to be just right. And it is like a little miniature studio.
What is it about? I mean, obviously, one of the things that jumped out at you, you say that's a male seahorse who had just given birth, and people go, "Wait a second, what?" Even those of us with we're very proud of our high school diplomas. I barely got through high school biology, pretty proud of that. And I went, right. I knew. What else was it about the seahorse that so fascinated you?
Well, they're fish, and they don't actually swim very well. But they have the little prehensile tail to hang on to things. So it's and the female passes her eggs off to the male, and the male has the pregnancy part of it to carry those young. And they're highly visual. Excuse me. They have independent eyes, so they can they can look behind them and in front of them at the same time. They can't really open their mouth. Their jaws kind of fused, so they eat plankton. They don't have a stomach, so they have to eat constantly. They don't have any sort of internal food storage. So there's just all these, but they also live all around the world in temperate and tropical water. So they're highly successful, but there's only about less than 50 species, but they're spread out all over the place. So they're just fascinating.
We were raving about, well, I think everybody was raving about the documentary out a couple years ago, My Octopus Teacher, that took a whole bunch of hardware, including some of the most prestigious prizes awarded to film, of course. And I watched it. I was telling the story of watching it. It was about 1:00 in the morning when I started. I was just scrolling through Netflix, I think, and I thought, I'll check this out and watch it for 10 minutes and see if it's something I want to watch later on. Because obviously I should go to bed because obviously I have work in the morning. And then the next thing you know, it's 90 minutes later and I'm sitting there like with tears in my eyes, tears rolling down my face, going, number one, I will never eat octopus again, number one. But number two, of course, had a huge impact. Even on this show, subsequent interviews, we spoke with experts on that particular creature, endeavoring to learn more about them. What a fascinating animal the octopus is. Did you always have a fascination with the octopus, or was this through the process of putting this book together? Did you become more and more intrigued with every passing image?
Well, my first encounter with an octopus was in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, and that was, I guess it was formative in a certain sense, but it was also 20 years ago. And it ended up on the cover of a book called Archipelago. And ever since then, I did a story about tide pools, and I had photographed one octopus, and then I did another story about marine microfauna, and there was a little, just post-larval octopus in that one. So that creature kept showing up in all of these different projects. So then I decided to do a bigger piece just about octopus. But then in the book, I was able to draw all that stuff together. So I have a long-term fascination with octopus, that's for sure.
There's nothing quite like the realization that you have grossly underestimated the impressive nature of another living being. And that was me with the octopus. And I feel like they vaulted almost right to the top of my list. with regards to the most impressive animals around. Your photographs. I mean, I know, again, apologies to the podcast listeners, but you have to check these out. We're talking to David Liittschwager, National Geographic photographer, acclaimed photographer. Is it one of your favorite animals to photograph with regards to the colors and the shape and almost its shape shifting? I mean, it's quite alien-like, right? It's unlike almost anything else on the planet.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're mollusks, so they, I guess that their cousins are the snails and slugs, but they have eyes that are actually, from a design and execution point of view. I mean, their eyes are better built than ours, and but they don't have much of a brain, but they have this very well executed neural network. They can, when they touch something, they kind of know what color it is, and they know what it tastes like just by touching it. And when you said shapeshifting, yes, they can change the texture of their skin. They can change the color of their skin. They can, they don't have, the hardest thing that they have is their beak, and it's pretty small. They have two other pieces of tissue that are a little bit stiff, but other than that, they can squeeze through a hole that when you look at the octopus and you look at this hole, you'd say no way. But then if you let them be the fantastic escape artists that they are, they'll be gone.
Yeah, I saw an Instagram video a while ago of that exact scenario, an octopus making a break for freedom on a fishing boat. John, you saw this one?
It's absolutely incredible. He shoved through, I don't know, it's like the top of a pop can.
Yeah.
And the octopus went directly through it.
And David, you're kind of like, the fishermen must have been cheering for the octopus because somebody had to be filming it. Somebody had to be okay with the octopus getting off the boat. But I'm the same sort of a thing. I'm going, there's no way he's going to fit through, and he did. And then there's the third subject of your book, which most people might think is one of the worst entities in the entire ocean. If you've ever brushed up against one when you're surfing or snorkeling, you know that not everybody loves the jellyfish. Did your mind change about the jellyfish, or did you know better heading into the project than the rest of us?
Well, I think, there's thousands of species of jellyfish, and, maybe there's a half a dozen that people have negative interchanges with. I do remember, getting a Portuguese man of war sting, across the face. That is, a stunning experience, to say the least. And, absolutely unforgettable. And I'm not going to volunteer for that one ever again.
Right.
But, there's so many lovely jellyfish that will never sting a person. Being stung by one is the least of it in a certain sense. I think there's, there's the cannonball jellyfish, whose principal predator are, endangered sea turtles. They're incredibly significant portions of the ocean's ecology.
David, when you participate in a project like this, and when you undertake this, and obviously so much goes into, photographing more than 500 specimens, and then you got to pick your favorite images, and of course you put this thing together, and I would imagine a box probably arrived at your front door, and you got to tear into it and see your hardcover book for the very first time. How does a project like this influence your perspective with regards to maybe even your emotional investment in the long-term survival of species like this? Does it have an impact on a guy like you?
Well, I have the great privilege to be able to make a living going out in the world to try to see how complicated, interesting, interconnected, but then it all comes in the end. What I'm trying to do is just show how beautiful it is, and kind of and I develop, a great deal of affection, and so I think that, and that changes me. So I think that sort of wanting to share, wanting to communicate the fact that having affection for the world, life, improves my life. So if I can in any way share that, that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, mission accomplished. It's an absolutely stunning work. Again, here it is. I'll hold it in front of the camera. This is Octopus, Seahorse, Jellyfish, just released, just published by National Geographic. Our guest, world-renowned photographer, David Liittschwager, a nature photographer, and in this case, showing off some of planet Earth's most remarkable sea creatures. The underestimated ones included, thanks to Neanderthals like me, underestimating jellyfish, octopus, and the rest of them. David, thanks for doing this, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You got it. I love how he put that. This is Earth Week. I mean, not just because it's Earth Week. I was about to say, who cares?
Earth Day coming up, right?
Earth Day coming up on Thursday. We're going to have a great conversation on Thursday. But talking about his affection for the planet, making his life better.
I mean, how could you not, looking at those pictures, being that close, learning about those incredible creatures, how could you not develop a,
Shame on me for my closed-mindedness around the value that the jellyfish. I always knew that the jellyfish was an important food source for a lot of animals.
I like how you brought that up, though. Like, a lot of people, they think of a jellyfish. The first thing they think of is a sting, right? So.
Yeah. When we got married down in Costa Rica, and we decided to treat everybody to like a day's excursion where you got to ride. Have you ever been on a banana boat? They pull this.
I have, yeah.
It's like a massive inflatable banana, sort of, and sort of like the shape of like a big canoe, and it's pulled behind a ski boat, typically a power boat, and they pulled us to this island. And when we were arriving at the island, everybody's enthusiastic and excited, and they do a blow by the island, and everybody's jumping off the banana, and you know where this is going.
I do.
The first few people that were in the water were all of a sudden like, get out, get out, get in. My buddy's looking at me, he's like, jellyfish, there's jellyfish everywhere. And everyone's like, swim through them. He's like, I can't, I'm getting stuck. And it was not the most ideal circumstance. So we started calling it Jellyfish Cove. And thankfully, the discomfort has subsided while the humor has remained in place now for several years, for more than 10 years. So that's good stuff. There's another animal story that I wanted to talk to you about, John. That's coming up in just a bit. But I want to remind our friends, do you know, I don't know if you know, I asked you to pull a photo of a Canada goose.
I think I know the one you're talking about.
Now you're starting to put two and two together. I want to talk about, I don't think they're technically Canada's national bird, but
they should be.
They probably should be. Yeah. First, speaking of birds, dare I, if you're looking for real Alberta poultry, chicken, turkey. I know. I can't. Sometimes, I mean, if you're looking for the best fresh Alberta chicken and turkey in the province, you're going to want to check out Friesen Brothers. 16 locations across the province. This business still family owned and operated, 65 years plus. Alberta grown, Alberta owned. Also, of course, Alberta beef, real Alberta beef, proudly presented by their team of real butchers, and a phenomenal selection of vegetarian and vegan products as well. Friesen Brothers knows that good food matters. Really good food matters, and that's why they make it job number one. Don't forget, the first of the month, it's 15% off your whole bill as long as you spend a minimum $75. You can learn more at friesen.com. Our friends at Eden Landscaping getting set for a busy spring. Now's a perfect time to get in touch with them if you want to learn more about what they can offer in bringing your outdoor space to life. If you go to landscapeedmonton.ca and click on services, you can see that whatever your vision, they'll execute it with precise attention to detail. That might be veggie planter boxes, edible garden boxes, excavation. Maybe you're running a gas line to put a propane natural gas heater into your garage. Why wait till the fall to try to make that happen? Check out landscapeedmonton.ca today. That's Eden Landscaping. Our friends at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge want to remind you that, they've got a great selection of new vehicles. They can share inventory between their two dealerships in Sherwood Park and St. Albert. But, of course, their pre-owned selection as well. Strong options for folks that aren't looking to break the bank, but they want to upgrade their ride. You can browse their pre-owned selection today online. Just follow the links. Look at that at Sherwood Dodge. 17 Rams in stock. That's the back-to-back-to-back Motor Trend Truck of the Year at Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge. And our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park want to remind you that as the weather gets better, it's blizzard season, and that includes the Very Cherry Chip Blizzard Treat. That's one of the featured blizzards on right now at the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. So this story out of Vancouver, this was one of those stories where I thought I want to put this in front of the Real Talk audience. It's not necessarily a super controversial story, or is it? I don't know. I can't decide personally how I feel about this.
I think that's what a lot of people are going to say when we bring it up. So when you bring it up, like, it's just some people are torn on this issue. Like, we know we have to do something, but how do we do it properly?
So as our cities expand, habitat becomes more and more human influenced.
The age-old.
And what are the animals supposed to do about it, right?
Exactly.
It's why you get, raccoons are probably a bad example, but it's why some species are threatened. It's why some other species thrive in cities, but they become a nuisance. And that includes the mighty Canada goose. You know, Canada geese poop every 12 minutes? I did a little research on this because I wanted to be able to present the facts, just the facts. Canada geese poop every 12 minutes, and it becomes a lot in cities with public spaces like parks and dog walking areas and green spaces and beaches like in Vancouver.
Yeah.
It's estimated that 3,000 non-migrating Canada geese call Vancouver home. 3,000 of them. And the Vancouver Parks Board says that number is unsustainable. It's a population they've got to control. And that's why they're targeting nests to do what they can to curb the Canada goose population in Vancouver. Okay, so they're asking people to help them locate goose nests this spring so they can slow the surge. They say that the problem is the geese are snacking on the youngest grass in the newly seeded fields, so it's impacting things like soccer fields and the like. They're digging holes next to sprinklers, and of course, the droppings polluting outdoor pools. They can cause slips on sports fields. You think of what you're slipping into. People don't love it. And of course, geese, as everybody knows, can become pretty aggressive during mating season too. So they're asking people to help them locate nests.
This is where it gets...
So when the geese step away, they can snag the eggs, and then so as not to psychologically damage the geese, they will replace the eggs with eggs that do not have reproductive capabilities. They're eggs that were seized last year that have been placed in a freezer, and so they're not going to hatch. There will not be goose 2.0 in that goose family. So I'm reading this and I'm going, I wonder how people would feel about this, especially maybe in a city like Vancouver that tends to be a little more sympathetic to environmental and other animal-related stories.
100%.
Right? How's it land with you?
I knew you were going to ask me here.
Well, I'm
gonna
curious.
Throw this at Johnny today.
Curious.
Well, I get why Vancouver's a problem. Like, geese, they like warm, marshy, wet areas. And I think that's the problem. And I've seen people saying that's the best thing we can do is kind of push them towards those areas and create less areas like that near places where we live. But that gets really, especially here in Alberta where they've got the man-made ponds in every little community. So I'm not sure, and I knew you were going to throw this to me, I don't have a right answer for this. But I do feel very strangely about baby egg hunting. This is it just sounds...
Like you wouldn't sign up to do that job.
Never.
But it's,
I mean, would any?
well, and this goes back to so Wyatt and our little guy and I were reading these books about animals. He's fascinated, right? Loves to. He's got this. By the way, this one book that he just got from the library, it's amazing. It pits different animals against each other, and it's like who would win in a fight between a killer whale and a great white shark, or who would win the one we were reading last night between a wolverine and a Tasmanian devil.
What?
Yeah, and
That's
it gets
a nice
and it teaches you all about the animal. It says
Yeah.
like the wolverine's claws look like this, and the Tasmanian devil's claws look like this, and then it sort of explains how it would play out. What do you think would win, by the way, in a fight between an alligator and a python?
Alligator and a python?
Yeah, what would be your guess?
I mean, I'm guessing a python is
Ooh,
quicker,
okay.
but I would say the alligator.
Well, see,
Like, how
always,
many
always
bites?
go with your gut.
How
Always
many-
go with. I was like alligator for sure.
Yeah.
No.
Because the bites, the poison.
Well, the alligator
slows
doesn't
it down.
like the texture of the python's skin, so when it bites, it's going to let go. And it also, and this is a kid's book, and it's like, because the python doesn't have limbs that are easy to tear off. I'm like, what? It's like our 6-year-old's reading
Why?
this. But anyway, it turns out the python would win, so says the book. But they were talking about wolverines and how wolverines are a threatened species, and then the book was explaining how back in the day, like decades and decades ago, provincial and federal governments used to pay like for the cull for people to get rid of them because they were pests, because they're killing farm animals and the like. But their habitat has been eliminated as humankind's footprint has spread.
And of
right?
course, they're a predatory animal. And when you get rid of less of those, the smaller, weaker animals, like geese, I'm sure they're overrunning these populations because there's less predators out there.
So it's not unusual to see coyote calls, and obviously, I mean, I
Yep.
remember talking to a rancher once that was like, people. He was kind of joking. He came at it from the right angle, I thought, but facetiously, he was talking about the bleeding hearts and all this. People that get upset about us, protecting our cows from coyotes. They get upset at us shooting coyotes on our ranch. He said, until you've seen a coyote attacking a calf that's not even yet fully born, it's like halfway born, halfway out of its mom, and the coyotes are already circling.
Yeah.
He says, unless you've seen that and been trying to protect your herd against that, I don't really want to hear it. So we understand that animal population management is a thing and is necessary, but at the same time, I'm a little surprised it's happening in Vancouver.
Can we do a whole show on this? Because I feel like we need experts. Like, I know, and I've read a lot about this, but I'm not an expert, that culling can work, and it can also have the adverse effect where, especially wolves, coyotes, those are very smart, adaptable animals. And when you try to cull them, they get smarter, they hide better, they learn to move around. So it can have, the opposite effect. But
Yeah, coyotes are
we need
known
it.
to
We
be
need a
quite-
panel. We need a panel for this for sure.
It's not a bad idea.
We do.
All right, we'll add it to our list. I like this from David, who says, my grandma found a Canadian goose nest on her balcony, and they're absolutely bringing her joy as she watches them sit on the eggs. She's eagerly awaiting the 6 babies to hatch. That from David. So there you go. David will not be placing a call to the Parks Board to have those eggs shaken up on his grandma's balcony. Let us know what you think. Sincerely, I'd love to know where people land on this, how you feel about this, and this is a story that we'll follow up on. If you show that interest, Real Talkers, a lot of times you play a big role in the editorial content of this show and where it goes. Before we sign off for today, every single week, and it's the first show of the week, so on the long weekend it lands on a Tuesday, our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy. You can get a free quote on solar today, by the way, at kubyenergy.ca. They give us a chance to focus on a story or stories that have filled our buckets, stories of people paying it forward, stories of people going above and beyond with random acts of kindness, and oftentimes a movement that occurs with small beginnings. It's a feature we call Positive Reflections. And in the spotlight today, the minute that I saw this tweet, I thought, I've got to share this with our Real Talkers. If you want to read along, or if you want to learn more about this, if you want to share this with your friends, check out Richard Clark's profile on Twitter. He tweets at @rclarky. He says, a wee thread about a young boy in the tweet that got away. 3 weeks ago, my youngest, Gabriel, who's 12, came home upset. His love of woodwork was not deemed cool, nor was only having 6 followers on his Instagram. There's Gabriel doing an amazing job with these projects. 12 years old and 6 followers on Instagram. Richard says his dad, I was upset too. It's hard watching your kids battling with life, but what to do? Mom wasn't around, so Dad, the impulsive fool that he is, instead reached out to the lovely people on Twitter. Maybe he could persuade some of them to follow his son. So he did. He said, Twitter people, I don't know how many of you are on Instagram, but I'm looking for a favor. My 12-year-old loves woodwork, spends hours on his lathe making bowls, creating chopping boards, and he sells them to save up for a mountain bike. Now, Gabriel was aiming for 60 followers. He says that's the magic number in the teen world when your Instagram page is apparently no longer deemed an embarrassment. So he posted the tweet, and he got on with cooking tea. He, by the way, is on Instagram at Clarky_woodwork. Says Richard, but then something very odd happened. Followers started appearing slowly at first, but then in the hundreds, and finally his dad and son looked on in astonishment in their thousands, and by the time Gabriel went to bed, he had over 6,000 new followers, and when he woke up the next morning, he had 33,000, and it kept going, and by the end of the weekend, he had 250,000 and was overwhelmed by the tidal wave of kindness and support. But not only that, Gabriel had 20,000 orders for bowls and chopping boards, which he figured would take him 32 years to fulfill. And now the media was coming calling. He said it was a lot to take in for this wee lad of just 12 years old. And so, Gabriel was certain of one thing. He wanted to share the kindness. So instead of carving 20,000 bowls, he would carve just one, a special one, his bowl for Ukraine. And this 12-year-old and his dad set up a Just Giving page for the Save the Children's Ukraine appeal. And Gabriel set a target of £5,000, like $8,000 or so. The fundraiser would stay live until Easter, when one donor would be chosen at random to win this beautiful bowl for Ukraine. Within 24 hours of going live, says Richard, you wonderful, kind-hearted people blew our goal out of the water, donating over £50,000. The press even more excited, so Gabriel gave up a chunk of his holiday to run around doing interviews in the hope of raising even more funds. Says Richard, and so here we are. Together, we've raised tens of thousands of dollars. I'm not going to read the number he has on his tweet because I'm going to update it in just a second. Okay. Donations coming in from all over the world. The little story coming to a close, Richard says, but how it ends is up to you. It's your story. Certainly, we could all pat ourselves on the back for a job well done. Save the Children, already enormously grateful for the very real difference this money would make. But what if there was another ending, Richard says? What if we threw caution to the wind, let go of our cynicism, and really went for it? What if we blew this silly tale of a small boy and his bowl out of the water for one last swing shot around the moon? He says we're all so tired of COVID and war and division. What if we came together in one big, generous, soppy, silly last hurrah and retweeted this and all chipped in to save the children? He says it's up to you, lovely people, as to whether lightning strikes a third time. Either way, a heartfelt thanks. You've already changed so many lives. And if you do want to follow a little lad making bowls and other things from wood, feel free to follow on Instagram, Clarky_woodwork. Well, check this out. This is the fundraising page at justgiving.com. Gabriel's bowl for Ukraine has raised almost 5,000% of its goal.
Wow.
A total of £246,000. Johnny, that's more than $400,000.
Attaboy.
From the little 12-year-old that started this all with 6 Instagram followers. Now, if that's not reason for positive reflection, I don't know what is, right? You can send us your stories for consideration of inclusion and positive reflections to talk@ryanjesperson.com. And a reminder, you can get your free quote on solar today by visiting kubyenergy.ca. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to check in with Calgary's new poet laureate. This guy is a gem. And on Thursday, it's Earth Day. We'll also follow the stories making news, including updates from Ukraine and other things that demand real talk. Thanks for making time for us on this Tuesday. We'll talk to you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, technical producer John Hicks, managing director Josh Dunford, account coordinator Lawrence Derlago, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory. the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is the flagship property of Relay Communications Group Incorporated. All rights reserved. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.